Welcome to Overlooked, my unique take on the witch hand plot. It's a very simple routine that I've been doing for the last couple of years, and I really hope you enjoy it. It's a very simple thing to do, but it will take a little bit of explaining. In the next section I'll just be going over the brief method so you get a better understanding, and then we'll break down each section one at a time in detail. So I'll see you in the next section. Now, the main concept or premise with the effect is you will have your spectator write down the name of a childhood friend on a billet. I always use blank business cards, although you can do it with index cards or blank playing cards. And essentially, instead of using a coin like you traditionally use in a witch hand, we're actually going to use the billet they write on, and we're going to peek the name they write. Now, because we peek the name they write, we're actually going to use this information to force which hands the spectator puts the paper in, which means we can later come full circle and predict it at the end. Because we know the information, we are basically telling them where to put the object, or paper in this case. So the first thing you need to do is decide which hands you want to force so you can predict it later on. Typically I will always force the spectator's left hand, their left hand, then their right hand, then their right hand. And I'll write this on a prediction at the beginning. I'll usually have your choice, and I'll have your left, your right, your right. I usually store that as like a background on my phone, or I'll just have it on a piece of paper. And I'm just going to show you what peek I use first. It's fully justified within the routine, and I've taken a peek that I overlooked years ago and repurposed it for this effect. So I'm going to go teach you the peek coming up, which is the Sid Bergson No Tear Center read. So this is the Sid Bergson No Tear Center read. I originally saw this in the Tower Bell book, so if you want to have a look check it out, it's in there. And it's very different to most traditional center tears or peeks in the sense that you don't tear it up, and the method relies on you putting the billet behind your back. Now, what you first need to do is get a blank business card or a blank playing card or some nice thick index card, and you're going to fold it in half and then up like that, so it's essentially in like 3 panels. Draw an X and a line there. This is where your spectator will be writing. Now, the concept behind it is very simple. Basically, they write the name in there, they close it up. You can't see through that at the moment, but you take the billet behind your back and you reverse the orientation like that. So when you bring it back out in front of you, the writing is obviously exposed, but from the spectator's point of view at the front, it looks identical. So this means you have all day to read this information. It's a very unique peek, and I never found a way of using it, but it really inspired this routine. So that's the basic concept. You put it behind your back, you reverse fold it, you then put it behind your back a second time, you change the orientation so you can hand it back to your spectator just like this, and everything looks as it should. So that's basically it. Just get yourself a card, fold it into thirds, and that's it. The Sid Bergson No Tear Center read. So this is the main choreography about the peek and how I get the peek, and hopefully every action is justified. So your spectator writes the name down, you take it back. Usually I say, can you hold it up to the light and make sure you can't see through it. I then say, okay, the game's very simple. You're going to take this, you're going to put it behind your back. You're going to either put it in your left or right hand. When you're done, you're going to bring it forward just like this. It's important you keep both hands looking the same. I don't want you to think I'm somehow looking at your knuckles or fingers and guessing that way. That's not how this works. It's also important when you put it behind your back that you don't make any really loud noises, because that'll give the game away. So when you're done, put this behind your back and just hold it there for a minute. And that's the choreography. I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing. Firstly, I'm taking the billet, I'm reversing it behind my back, I bring it forward with my fists clenched like this. I then take the billet out and I pay attention to my knuckles and my fingers. This is when I get the peek. I have a reason to look down here. This justifies me looking down and getting a couple of seconds to peek the name. Obviously the spectator can't see the writing because it's facing them. I then realise that I need to explain that you don't need to make any noise when you put the billet behind your back. So that gives me a reason to go back behind my back for a second time, reversing the orientation of the billet, and then handing it back to them. At this point, everything looks as it should. So I'm going to run through that one more time. Okay, you can make sure you can't see through this. The aim of the game is very simple. You're going to take this, you're going to put it behind your back. You're going to put it in either your left or your right hand. When you're done, you're going to bring both fists out just like this. It's important you keep both hands looking the same. I don't want you to think I'm somehow looking at your fingers or your knuckles and guessing that way. That's not how this works. It's also important when you put it behind your back that you don't make really loud noises, because that will give the game away. So when you're done, I want you to take this and put it behind your back. And that is basically the choreography and how I do it. Now, before you begin performing this effect, you need to decide on what hands you want to force on your spectator. I'll get into how we force it later, but it's important you have a prediction set up in advance. Now, typically I'll usually have a piece of paper with something like this. It says you will choose your left, your left, your right, your right. These are the hands I usually force on my spectator. I do 4 phases. It's important you have your and not just left, because obviously there might be an implying it's your left. So it's important to put the word your in. So you can have that folded up and keep it in your pocket and hand it to your spectator before it begins, or keep it in your wallet. In a casual situation, I actually have the prediction on my home screen on my phone. This just means I'm set up to perform it whenever I'm out, and I'm good to go whenever. I also always keep one of the billets in my phone, so whenever I'm out and someone asks to see something, it's all self-contained and I'm good to go. So you just need to decide on which hands you want to force and try and choose something that's memorable to you. I find left, left, right, right is the easiest thing for me to remember. And go ahead and set your predictions, and now I'll go and teach how we force. Now that you've got your predictions set in an order you remember, it's time to force the spectator's hands. Now for this example, I'm going to be pretending that we peek the name Bob on the billet. This is a short name which makes it easy to follow along with, but I'm sure you'll get the concept. So the first question I say to my spectator once they put the paper behind their back is this. I say, I want you to focus on the person. If they're a male, I want you to bring the paper out in your left hand. If they're female, bring it out in your right. Obviously, because we've peeked it, we know the person is a male, we're basically telling them what hand we want them to put it in. Likewise, say we wanted to force the left hand and we saw a female, I'll just reverse the question and say, if the person you're thinking of is female, put it in your left hand, and if they're male, put it in your right. That's basically how this whole concept works. It's really simple to do, but it just requires a little bit of jazzing on your part. You're just basically switching depending on what name you've peeked. Likewise, so they bring their hands out like this, we know which hand it is, you do the reveal as you like. Presentation is up to you. Crack on with what you want to do. Now the second question I ask is, I say I want you to visualize the name written up in the air and just count how many letters there are in your head. So I give the spectators time to count the letters. The next question I say is, if the name's got 5 letters or more, put it in this hand. If it's got 4 or less, put it in the other. Now say we peeked Bob and I was trying to force the left hand again, I would just switch the orientation. So I've seen Bob, I know it's got 3 letters, so I'll say, if the name you wrote has got 4 letters or less, put it in your left hand. If it has 5 letters or more, put it in your right. Now it's important that you point towards the spectator's hand. I don't usually say left or right because some people struggle with their lefts or rights, so you want to make things as easy as you can. So just point to the hand and assign which hand you want. Now the third question I ask is, they now know how many letters are in the name, I've asked them to visualize it. So I ask them whether the number is odd or even. This time in my example, I'm going to be forcing the spectator's right hand and I peek the name Bob. So I know it's an odd amount of numbers, so I'll just say perfect. If the amount of numbers is even, put it in your left hand. If it's odd, put it in your right hand. See, I've now forced the right hand because I've seen the name Bob, and it's as easy as that. The fourth round, or the fourth question I ask is, I get the spectator to focus on the first letter of the name. Now for example, we're still going to use Bob and say I want to force their right hand. This is what I'll say. I say, I want you to think of the first letter. If it's a vowel, like A, E, I, O, or U, put it in your left hand. If it's a consonant, put it in your right. I know Bob begins with a B, so I know they're going to be putting it in their right hand. Likewise, we just reverse the question if we pick the different name. It's a very simple concept, just play around with it and I'm sure you'll get it. And this way we not only know which hand it's in each round, we've also forced the outcome to match our prediction that we get back to. But before you do that, you need to reveal the name. So when it comes to revealing the name you picked, obviously this is down to you presentationally, but you can reveal it verbally or you can write it down and do a big reveal at the end. One little thing I'll suggest is try and get, once you've done the reveal of the name, try and get the billet back off your spectator. If they are left with this, they may be able to reverse engineer how it works, because it's obviously quite a simple idea. So that was just a little tip I give you. Try and get it back. Now, because this is you're quite hands-on with the billet, I think it's important to miscall the first letter. Typically, I'll reveal the first letter and then I'll reveal the last letter, and then I'll just do the prediction, not the prediction, the reveal or the writing of the reveal. Because you're so hands-on with this, I always miscall the first letter. I'll always try and say something that sounds similar. So, for example, we saw Bob. I'll spend the focus on the letter and I'll call something out like a P. P sounds like B. It's close enough, but you can correct yourself and come back and get the hit. The reason I do this is because I'm so hands-on with the billet, I don't want the spectators to get in their mind that I've somehow peaked it. So the best way to do this is to get something wrong. If I'd seen the writing, why would I intentionally make myself wrong? It makes no sense to the spectators. So that's the one thing I do to throw them off the scent that I've seen the writing, is to miscall the first letter. So that's just a little tip that I do, and it helps disguise the method. This is such a simple routine and it relies on one principle, which is basically the peak. You want to cover that up as much as you can. So miscall the first letter and then correct yourself after and reveal as you like. Now you understand the main method and the presentation of the routine, I thought I'd offer a couple of alternative handlings where you can achieve the same effect. For example, sometimes when I'm doing the Sid Bergson no test center read, instead of doing the behind the back twice and then just reversing the orientation, sometimes I'll actually play a game myself where they try and guess which hand it's in my hands. It works the same way. You put the billet behind your back, you bring your hand forwards, they guess which hand it's in, you can then peek it that way. You can play 2 or 3 phases of them trying to guess. When I do this, typically I'll play 2 phases and I'll always keep it in my right hand. I find that that's what most spectators will guess, and it's cool when they can guess too. I'm sure you're aware of, when you saw the Sid Bergson peek, that if someone's standing directly behind you, it is not very good on angles. So in that situation, your audience management is really important. If someone's behind you or to your side, you really need to get them in front of you. This makes sense usually in the context of a routine anyway. You want people watching you rather than the back of you. Alternatively, if you can't do that, you have to manage yourself and adjust your body position. So either try and find a wall or somewhere you can get away with the move. If you're performing for a table or something and you're standing up, maybe just pick a spectator who's in the appropriate position and perform it on them. You need to kind of be improvisational with this, a bit of quick thinking. Now, if you're performing this sitting down, you're usually pretty good, because if you sat on a chair, the back of the chair will hide the move, so no one behind you will see. So that's a pretty good option. Alternatively, instead of putting it behind your back, you can actually put your hands underneath the table, and that way you can do the move then and bring it out like that, and then you just ask your spectator to do the same thing. It's the same effect, just it looks a little bit different. Now, for some reason, if you can't do the peak, you can't move your spectators or the venue, and you just can't block the move, then I would recommend you learning Millard Longman's Acidus Novus. Now, this is obviously not mine to teach. If you don't know it, I highly recommend you go and get it. It's a brilliant peak. But I will explain how I will use it if I'm in a situation where I can't use the Sid Bergson no test centering. So for those of you who know the move, you get the billet in quadrants. Now typically I will get the billet off the spectator and I'll put it behind my back as usual, and I'll bring my fists clenched like this. And then I'll point to my knuckles and my fingers and say, I don't want you to think I'm somehow looking at my knuckles or your knuckles or fingers and guessing that way. And that gives you another reason to look down and get the peak. Now I can't really go into much further detail because it's not mine, but this is just an alternative when your angles are terrible. So bear that in mind when you're in trouble. Another alternative handling I've used in the past is using a peak wallet. Now, if you've got a peak wallet, the only one I tend to use in the past is the Stealth Assassin wallet, where you have to go back to the wallet to get the peak. So you could have someone write the name on the business card and you put it in the wallet. You then go into your wallet and take out a banknote. Now this banknote has the prediction written on it in advance. You scrunch this up into a ball and play the game with that instead. So this way you don't have to put anything behind your back, the billet goes in the wallet. And you can do the routine the exact same way, just use the questions to force the hand and then the predictions in the hand, which is actually quite a nice touch. So that's another way of doing it if your angles are difficult or you have a peak wallet that you can use. Alternatively, you could use an impression device. There's many impression devices on the market where the spectator writes on it and you can get an impression. You just have them take the paper they wrote on and scrunch it up in a ball, and then you can use the same questions to force which hand it's on. Or in, sorry. So that's a few options depending on what equipment you own, what situation you're in, what venue's in, and what your angles are. Another little thing I've done in the past is I've actually used playing cards. So you can do like a poker tells demonstration. So you can have a spectator pick a playing card, and if you can get a peak or use marked cards, or you have a way of knowing what this card is, they can fold it up into quarters and you can do a similar thing. And you can just be like, if the card's black, put it in this hand. If it's red, put it in the other. If it's a diamond, put it in this hand. If it's a heart, put it in the other. If it's a picture card or if it's a number card, and you can slowly get down to what card it is and reveal that way. So that's another little way of using this force and the routine. And if you haven't got any billets on you but you can get your hands on cards, and that's something you can do in a pinch. So that's just a few other ways of using the force and the handling in general, and I hope they come in useful. So this is just a quick run through the effect. It's a little performance. I'm with my friend Daryl. He knows how the effect works, but I'm just going to run through the choreography and how you would perform it in the real world. So Daryl, we're going to play a little childish game that I used to play with my friend Max when I was younger, and I want to take you back to your childhood, and I want you to get the name of someone in your head that you used to play games with when you were growing up. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Once you've got that person in mind, I just want you to write their name down there for me. I'll look away.
Okay. Perfect.
Come back. Can you fold it up?
Yep.
Perfect. And just hold it up to the light so I can't see. Happy?
Yeah. Happy.
Good, I'll take that back. Now, the idea of the game is very simple. You're going to take this and you're going to put it behind your back. It's either going to go in your left or your right hand. When you're done, you're going to bring your hand just up like this. It's important you keep both fists looking the same. I don't want you to think I'm somehow like looking at your knuckles and fingers and guessing that way. It's also really important when you do this that when you put it behind your back, you do it as quietly as possible. I don't want you to think I'm somehow listening to the sounds and guessing that way. Okay? So put that behind your back.
Okay.
And I just want you to think about this person, whether they're male or female. Can you do that?
Yep.
Perfect. So if they're a male, I want you to put the paper in this hand, and if they're female, put it in this hand.
Okay.
You done that?
Yeah.
Bring both hands on like this. Just think female or male.
Yeah.
Female or male. I want to go for male, yes?
Correct.
Perfect. Put your hands back behind your back. I just want you to visualise the name written in front of us, and I want you to count how many letters there are in the name.
Okay.
You got that?
Yeah.
Okay. If the name's got 4 letters or less, I want you to bring it out on this hand. If it's got 5 or more, bring it out on this hand.
Okay.
When you're ready? It's this hand again, yes?
Correct.
Boom, 2 out of 2. Do it again. This time I just want you to think whether the amount of letters is odd or even. So if it's even, bring it out in this hand. If it's odd, bring it out in this hand. You done?
Yep.
This time I want you to just say yes to every question I say, okay? Is it in this hand?
Yes.
Is it in this hand?
Yes.
Is it in this hand?
Yes.
I like it when you tell the truth. Cool, put it behind your back one last time. I just want you to visualize the first letter of this name. Can you do that?
Yep.
So if it's a vowel like A, E, I or U, bring it out in this hand. And if it's a consonant, which is basically any other letter, bring it out in this hand.
Okay.
This time I'm not even going to look at you.
Okay.
Just think which hand it's in.
Yep.
It's in this hand, yes?
Correct.
4 out of 4. Cool, so can you put that in your pocket for 1 second?
Sure.
Now the game was kind of to guess which hand it is, but I also wanted to kind of know what the name was. So I just want you to think of the name, see it written up in the air like this,
Yeah.
and just focus on the first letter.
Okay.
Keep saying it over and over again in your head. Is it a G?
No.
It's okay. Does it sound like a G?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's count exactly how many letters there are in this name. 3 letters, yes?
Correct.
Is the name... When was the last time you saw this person?
A few years back now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, next time you see them, say... Jim, Liam says hello. Is that it?
Yeah.
Cool. Now, this wasn't just about guessing the name. This was something more than that. Now, I had a feeling I knew exactly what you're going to do before you did it. Now, if you can remember how the game went out, you put it in your left hand, then your right hand, then your right hand.
Yeah.
On my phone, I had a picture before this all began. What does that say?
It says you will choose your left, your right, your right.
I just want to give credit to a couple of people who kind of helped inspire this effect and influenced it and my thinking behind it. Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you to Colin McLeod and his Witch Hand effect on his Penguin Live DVD or download. It kind of gave me the idea of using a force when you know a piece of information. I also want to credit the other brothers and their effect hands down. That gave me the inspiration of using a billet and a written name to do the Witch Hand game. Although the handling is very, very different, the paper and the name really inspired this, so I'd like to say thanks to them. And obviously the main inspiration behind this goes to Sid Bergson and his wonderful No Test Center read, so thank you to Sid Bergson, and yeah, it's a great move. And that's the end of the project. I just want to say thank you for your time and then digesting the information. This routine has been one of my, I'll call it my 1,000 timer. I do it all the time. It's so simple to do, and you can do it on the spot. It's perfect for casual situations, and it's strong enough to use in paid gigs in a professional situation. I hope you really enjoy the project and you consider using it. It's nice to finally give it away. I've had this idea for a long time, and I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for watching. I appreciate it.